In this DBT quick tips video, we're going to be covering the 7 assumptions of DBT. Now, these are beliefs that are really important to take on when getting into DBT and using the DBT skills. They're almost, in a certain respect, they're kind of like targets that we strive for in how we're using the skills, and can be powerful motivators in using the skills and getting the most out of them. You know, it's no secret that beliefs are not just powerful motivators of within life, but they're actually what give life meaning and direction. So that's why, looking at these as a sort of map or compass in life and in the use of these skills is really important. So the first skill assumption is that people are really doing the best they can. It doesn't really serve anybody any good to assume that, you're not putting in your all, and chances are, that's you'll be hard pressed to find someone who isn't doing their best. Now, sure that there is dips and ups and downs when it comes to what we do in our lives and what we're striving for, but you're never going to meet people who flat out are going to say, nope, don't care, I'm completely lazy, I'm not trying one bit. Now, people might say that sometimes, and it might be because there's a fair amount of bitterness. But this is an important assumption to take on, especially when you hear yourself being bitter or other people. To second guess that and say, well, I'm going to assume not. A part of doing the best we need in our lives really boils down to people in general do want to be the best they can be, and so it invites us to almost, is almost a call to looking at a person's best self, even if it's not always evident at every given moment in life. The second assumption is that people want to improve, that we're beings that are constantly striving for more and better. If that wasn't the case, chances are you wouldn't be looking at this video. There's something within us that makes us special as people, this need, this desire for better, for more, for greatness. And it, again, is a very important assumption to make in those moments where it's hard to feel that or to remember that's actually there. Now, the D in dialectic behavior therapy, dialectical, implies that there is a paradox. There's two sides of a coin that's going to always be present. And this third assumption really brings that to the fore, that people need to do better. They need to try harder. That there has to be this push forward. And this third assumption is really the dialectic for the first two, is that, yeah, people want the best. People do try their best. And sometimes a person's best isn't good enough. At first blush, this assumption kind of feels like a bitter pill to swallow. I'm already doing my best, and what, you're asking for more? And the answer is more than yes, because yes, that part's true. But the underlying assumption is that everybody is able to do more. It's a firm belief in the power and the ability of every human being to grow. So it's actually a very positive, a very noble assumption to take on. And even sometimes throwing a little bit more of a complexity in this one, it might be that trying harder isn't necessarily the answer, but trying different is. And so again, there's this openness to more potential that lays over the hill. It's just out of sight, but that hope is there that yes, we are able to do better and we are able to do different. The fourth assumption is a bit technical, that people might not have caused the problems in their life, but they still have to fix them anyway. And it's technical in the sense of we're sidestepping blame. It seems to be, one of the biggest things that hold people back is the blame and resentment they carry in their lives. And fair enough, things hurt, and I wouldn't blame anybody for blaming. But there's a certain point where practically, when life is suffering, it's not doing anybody any good to blame. And we have to make a top priority solving the problems. So we might have inherited history of some people growing up with parents who have mental diagnoses, people being exposed to horrible atrocities, people being abused and hurt. Life, to say life is tough is an understatement. And those things aren't fair, and they're not good. And it hurts that they happened, and all that's true. But often it's more useful to almost put that to the side for later and say, okay, nevertheless, it's up to me to solve the problems that I was given. The fifth assumption is that new behaviors have to be learned, and not just learned, but they also have to be relearned in different contexts. So the heart of DBT is filling in deficits and skills and trying to develop new, better ways of handling the problems in life. And what this assumption appreciates is, it might be that it's actually quite easy to do the skills and accurately nail them when you're in session with your therapist. You might be able to do it at home, but as soon as you step outside, man, it's a whole new ball game. Learning is very much dependent on location. You do have to relearn what you know in different environments and figure out how, well, the skill works this way in front of my therapist, but when my therapist is not there and I'm under stress, people are looking at me in the social sphere, it's going to be a lot different. And so there's going to be trips and nuances in the different places you are to make these skills work. So that's an assumption right off the bat. Just because it doesn't work in a therapy office or just because it doesn't work in outside the therapy office, well, that's not grounds to say, the skill doesn't work. What that really is a sign it needs to be learned in those different places. And to take that seriously, it's probably not going to be a simple matter either. And it's going to take just as much effort the first time you learned it in the office as it's going to take you outside the office. The sixth assumption is a grounding assumption, that we're taking on this idea that all behaviors, which in DBT we think of as actions, thoughts, and emotions, all of those are behaviors, all of those are things we do. Well, everything is caused. You can almost kind of think of life as one big game of dominoes, that one domino falls and knocks down the one in front of it. And this is helpful for a number of reasons, this assumption. One is it takes off the bitterness of blame, that anything that happens to you is within a context. And for example, say, well, no one likes being yelled at by their boss, and that's wrong. We're not trying to excuse any behaviors, but to appreciate, well, what were the 5 dominoes that were knocked over and hit the boss? Maybe he got a horrible call from his wife. Maybe he just got bad news. A relative of his is not doing well medically wise. There's a lot of things that can go into a behavior, and not just to accept it on a superficial level. There's a history in everything that happens. So that's number 1. Number 2, what's useful about this assumption is the fact that any given behavior, thought, feeling, or action has a history. Well, that means that there's a lot more room to affect change. We might not be able to directly change an emotion when it's happening, but maybe we can find those other dominoes that led up to that emotion, tackle those. So this assumption, again, opens up possibilities for using skills and solving problems in a deeper way. Now, the last assumption is taking on that it is probably more effective to simply solve problems, to push for change, as opposed to judging and blaming. Judging and blaming has its place. Judgment blame, those are quite useful labels we can use to make sense of the world around us, and we need to make sense of the world around us. There's a downside to judgment and blame because those sort of ways of thinking and feeling hike up emotional intensity to the point maybe you're going to cross that red line and it's going to take you places you wish you wouldn't go. So by putting those off, reserving judgment, reserving blame for later, maybe in a better moment, and first focusing on solving the problem practically, is going to make life a heck of a lot more easy and tolerable, and maybe even meaningful, maybe even worthwhile. So those are the 7 DBT skill assumptions. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a click on like, share it with your friends. If you want to leave me a comment, you can do that in the comment box, or you can check out my website, shoot me an email. And you can check out my Patreon account where I have loads of other different videos like this one. I'll see you in the next video.